Hi, I'm Jiang. I'm a co-founder of Social Layer, and today I'm going to talk about digital space and the modular social infrastructure for pop-up cities. Next. Yeah. So Social Layer is the modular infrastructure for decentralized community. We allow features of managing events, maps, relationships, and identity and profile for many kinds of community. So Pop-up City is the emerging global community network which was started in 2023 and in Juzaru, Montenegro. And since then, there are many pop-up cities coming, and there was Mu Chiang Mai in Thailand, and also Edge Esmeralda in California, and also Zanzaru in Tanzania, and a bunch of them happening all around the world. So, so the pop-up city has gathered the digital nomads and also crypto nomads and many projects around many different countries. And what is the difference between pop-up city and other events and conference? Is that it allows making the events in the developing country that was not able to afford to have a technical conference, and also but allow people to co-live, co-work, co-create together. And also in this new diversified event format, people are able to create something and also balance their life and also explore new ideas in the pop-up city. Yeah, so if we zoom out and look at the global community network, so at the bottom there is the local community, and there are digital nomads, which are people from travel from one place to the other and joining the events, conference, and hackathons. And for a pop-up city, they are able to gather people in the of the local community, but also attract people from outside and exchange a lot of ideas and projects, and also ideology and culture and technology in this format. And in this way, we are able to is able to form a new way, a new kind of network states and global community with this interconnected pop-up city network, which allow social and technical transition and very fast information exchange, yeah, in the social perspective. But what kind of infrastructure do we need to build for this community? Yeah, so because pop-up city is an open network and it has very diversified culture and lifestyle and technology and protocols. So there would be the identity module, permission, and also payment, and also data storage, and also credential and trust, and also treasury and governance. Yeah, and also the traditional the Web2 social media application like Farcaster, Nostra, or Luma was also involved. But they are all built around the real-world use case and connecting people in real life. So we can envision that there would be a modular digital space framework for the decentralized social, which is a multi-layer framework architecture. It has components like community management, and also it allow a decentralized data layer that could provide a portable and ownable data for self-sovereign individuals. And also, we would think that it could be diversified in terms of protocols and allow multi-protocol integration to incubate a more rich ecosystem. And it should also be extensible and composable to allow developers to join and contribute. So for social, our social layer is building the modular social trust infrastructure to allow creating and recording these social interactions and relations. There could be identity, and which can be a Drupal or Ethereum wallet, but also the on-chain credential, which is about the activities and achievements and trust you build on-chain. And also there are event app, map app, and also community tokens and DAO governance module. But also, but in this with this foundation of architecture, we allow all kinds of communities like DAOs, learning communities, local communities, hacker house, and co-living space. But also, I think the general social layer, which is the social perspective of the whole ecosystem, will be multi-layered and also open for different kind of protocols and applications. And with this digital space and the digital modular framework, we are able to build new infrastructure for verifiable trust in the community. So as we may think, the community is in a very large spectrum. So for fully trusted community, they are very local, but people are desecrated from other community outside. And for fully distrusted community, it's like a conference. So you don't care about what other people, and you don't build relationship with them. But for in the middle, there is the conditional trust. So that is a community with some people you know, but there are also some people you don't know, but you are building trust with them in this network. So in the future, I think we are building the digital space, and the digital space will be evolved into a network of digital gardens. The digital garden can be regarded as the hubs in the ecosystem, but also there are corridors and transition points to connect these hubs and digital gardens. Yeah. And yeah, so thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Katz, and one of the things I love about working in crypto is that we're all here to disintermediate different types of power structures. And what I'd like to talk to you about today is disrupting libraries. For too long, they've made access open and unrestricted to information. It's dangerous, and I'm here to ask you to help me to stop it. Does anybody have a lighter? Does anybody have a lighter? We're going to burn some books today. I need a lighter. Can I have it? Can you help me out, Christian? Christian, we're not burning books today. We're building libraries. I love libraries. I grew up loving books and reading, and I had this idea just a couple weeks ago at ETHCC, talking to Jeff Emmett about a new book that he published called Exploring MicroFi. And he had this really cool novel NFT mechanism to help with the distribution of these books. And the thing about that it got my mind thinking about was that it was really loud in the place where we were having this conversation, and so I was only picking up bits and pieces of what he was saying. But I saw this NFT, and I asked him, or it was a QR code that represented an NFT, and I asked him, I said, hey, Jeff, why don't we have decentralized libraries? Why hasn't anybody paired a QR code to a book in a decentralized registry that would allow us to better leverage books, which they're like one of the most poorly allocated and underutilized resources I can think of, right? They're sitting on our shelves, and except for the small percentage of us that are like really passionate about maybe collecting books and, you know, books that are special to us and we like to keep them and display them, for many of us, I just want to know that they're going to some good use. And there's a difference between depositing a book or donating a book to a library and depositing a book into a sharing ecosystem where I can then withdraw from that. I can withdraw from that library as well. But here's the idea. I'm just going to lay this out for you, and then tell you a bit about the steps that we're taking toward building this. This is a very new idea. We only started working on it, and I found a few other people that have kind of expressed similar ideas around this topic, mostly on Twitter. None of them have gotten too far along, but the premise is that we take something like a QR code or an NFC chip, you pair that to an entry in a decentralized registry, and then that person can edit, the person who scanned that can edit that entry in the registry. And they just simply indicate, where is that book in the world generally? And what is the status of its availability? Because it's not just a library, but you know, you could buy, sell, trade books that on any terms that someone wants to make them available. And this is where we're getting into a little bit more of the topic of this conversation, which is supposed to be about knowledge and sharing, which has a lot to do with trust and conditional trust, which Jiang just mentioned. So the arbitrary boundaries that everyone is able to draw around themselves and the terms that they want to participate in a library like this on are really interesting, because I could have a number of books in my library that I'm willing to make available to anybody that has a common interest and some additional set of criteria that could be like, is willing to bring it back to me within 2 weeks, is willing to leave me with a deposit, has at least 2 types of connections, no more than 2 hops away, a trust score on some arbitrary reputation system of more than a certain amount. We can stack these signals in ways that become really interesting, because we can dramatically increase the reach of our trust graphs much further than our social graphs, right? And so that's why I consider something like this decentralized library project primarily a social experiment first, and a knowledge sharing and a sharing economy project second. So in the same way that Amazon started as a bookstore and then commodified, merchandised all these other aspects of our lives, I think it's really interesting to explore and experiment around this idea of like, hey, let's start with sharing books, and then we can share all kinds of other things. But let's talk a little bit more about what that's based upon. And this gets into some of the underlying architecture, the infrastructure that we're building. And our main project is called Maitri. It's about decentralizing social media by incentivizing interoperability between different social media applications to create shared network effects. The idea is we defragment all these users spread across hundreds and hundreds of smaller social media applications, bring them together into one larger network, a network of networks, and that's how we present a more meaningful competitive threat to the monopolies. But there's one layer of this project. It's a full interoperability stack. There's one layer of this project, though, called community graphs. And as social graphs map our relationships one-to-one, community graphs map our relationships in groups. And that's really important when we're talking about things like this book sharing economy, a knowledge sharing economy, resource sharing, conditional trust. And so you can take something like any metrics you would like, and you can say, we have an affinity group on a topic over here. We have people that are in a certain geographical area, certain people with different types of backgrounds or interests. They can align in the place where they overlap. And that means that, say, one of our friends was really passionate about a book sharing club that he started a book club within Zuzulu, and he said, I'd love to share my books, but I really want to share them with the people close to me within this community. Well, that's an arbitrary boundary that he can draw around himself with community graphs, which is going to look completely different than someone else's criteria for how they want to participate in a sharing economy. And I hope that that's a helpful illustrative example of how something like community graphs can extend the reach of our trust graphs much further than our social graphs. And with the time that we have left, I would really like to talk a bit more about how we're exploring this practically and how we're starting to build this. We've just put together like a basic Airtable, a very simple database that is not even permissioned. It's absolutely centralized at this point. But we've got a small group of people that are basically starting to build on this and put together a little website. The idea is that we would really like to give this to the Internet Archive to operate as part of the Open Library project. And if you're not familiar with that, the Open Library is a really cool project. Well, first of all, the Internet Archive is also a really cool project. They're basically, if you've ever used the Wayback Machine, that's operated by the Internet Archive. So they're trying to create a digital library of Alexandria, and that is what the Open Library project is all about. But they've endured some legal struggles recently. The book and publishing company has sued them for basically scanning books and then making them available for rent with a kind of a digital permissioning technology that they developed, so that only one person can take this book out at a time, can have possession of it at a time. So there is only ever one digital copy of this book, and only one person can have it at a time, but it can change hands, so that there's it's sort of like a secondary market for these digital goods. But legal challenges have plagued them, and it's a really important fight for the freedom of information. The interesting thing about physical books is that there's no such equivalent, right? There's no question about our legal right to trade and exchange and buy and sell books, new and used. So it would make a really fantastic complement to the digital open library. And that's basically as far as we're trying to get this project along, is just from a really simple proof of concept to something that a group like the Internet Archive could take over. I've also learned a lot about some other interesting projects. Like there's one called worldcat.org, which is already it's broadly mapping books around the world. But another one it's called the Little Free Library, or the Free Little Library, and if you've seen these little birdhouse looking things in people's front yards with books in them, that's where those came from. And the interesting use case here is that with a decentralized library as a complement to that, you don't have to walk around a neighborhood to see what books might be worth reading in any of those little bookshelves. You could go to this index and search by criteria and say, I'm in this place, I want to read a book about this particular thing, what might happen to be available, and then just go get it. And there are really no concerns about privacy or security here, because we can do all these things in privacy-preserving ways that don't even require, at least at first, any ZK technologies. I mean, it's really simple. Look at how something like Craigslist just creates aliases for people to engage with each other by email, and then they decide when they're comfortable getting together offline to meet. And that meetup is the really important part about why I consider this to be a social project first and a knowledge sharing project second, because you're really helping to create opportunities for people to meet and form relationships and build communities around their common interests. So that's a bit about what we've been working on just these last few weeks. It's all very new, at least at this instantiation of it, as we're building this now, and how it can plug in and complement some of these other projects. I think I might give the rest of my time to move the conversation on to our fireside.
First, and apologize just because I made a mistake with the presentation of your background. He's the founder of Metric. So I wrote 3 questions so we can address those questions fluently between us. And the first one is, well, first of all, interesting talks. Thank you so much for the information. And how can the future of decentralized economies be shaped by enhancing open access to information and data across various sectors?
Would you like?
Can you go? You can.
Sure, sure. Althea from PSE, the privacy scaling and exploration arm of the EF, gave some really, really good talks on this over the last few days. And I think that her thought, she thinks so clearly and speaks really well on these topics, talking about the balance between public and private spaces. And I think that that applies most importantly to information, because so much of it is contextual. Like, open access to all information is not optimal in every case, right? But like, our ability to hold private spaces and to remain in control of information is tremendously important in ways that the promises, the aspirational promises of Web3 social media, like you own your identity, you own your social graph, you own your data, those things are wonderful aspirationally, but delivering on those promises is difficult. We're not quite there yet. And permissioning control to information, access to information, is ultimately more important than ownership. So building tools that allow people to retain better granular control of who has access to their information, on what terms and for what purposes, I think is maybe the most important part of that question, as the way that I would like to answer it.
Yeah. So as we are thinking about the conditional trust and how trust is built within the community. So community is a group of people that are related to each other, or know each other, or share something together, and also they are building and sharing trust. Yeah. So, and the information of how they share, and how much information are shared, and who are the information are shared to, are related to the trust they are built up upon their yeah, activities and relations. Yeah. So, and the more trust in the community, and the more information you will share and receive.
Okay, so how you can address the thing that this information or these data that you provide into these services or into the on-chain are verifiable and is not like manipulated by other.
Well, and even there, just to add another dimension to this, like the privacy preserving part of it might include a way that you can share information that someone will know. They know that the person that shared with them is credible, has some degree of, proximity or affinity to them, but they might not know that it's you. There are lots of things that I might want to be known, but I might not want it to be known that I'm the one that said it. But I want it to be known that I have like credentials or a qualified opinion on a subject. So especially when it comes to things that are social, and it's like, if you want to, would you want the history of the books that you've read to be public? I might want to share that information much more contextually, or to recommend a book without letting you know that I'm the one that recommended it to you, but you ought to know that a person close to you who you trust in that dimension made the recommendation, so that we can get the benefits of more free exchange of ideas, without that chilling effect that sometimes comes with speech being public.
Okay, and what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I have the same idea.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I'm thinking in science, for example, when you are talking about books, but when we are talking about articles, so you can ensure that the article that you see, it has the true data. That, I mean, I trust in you, I know you in the laboratory, but how I know that it's a a trust data.
Yeah, I think that's where we get into some really important distinctions between like objective truth and subjective truth, and subjective truth is a really dangerous phrase, right? But so much of the time, it's like if we restrict ourselves to trying to get down to some objective truth, we have to consider who is the arbiter of that truth, and who are you willing to put in that position, what is the criteria. It's just it's a mess, right? So what I think is a much better way to approach that fundamentally is to say that like our knowledge and trust graphs can and should remain probably highly subjective and contextual, so that it follows more like Google PageRank type of principles that, I know who I trust, and I know whose judgment in other people I trust. And those things are not always the same, right? I might trust you to have domain expertise, but you might be a terrible judge of character. You might be like overly trusting or gullible. And so when you start to assess by these different dimensions, you can say that like my knowledge and trust graph could look completely different than each of yours, even if we know all the same people in the room. So that the peer-reviewed articles that we're each looking at, we respect the people that were cited or interacted with those papers in different ways differently. And I think that's really positive in a way to find some kind of intersubjective truth, because other people can look at those signals and then they can use that to weight their opinions on those topics.
Great, agree. And I will do a specific question. The first one is, how can Metri ensure the quality and accuracy of open access data?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
How can Metri ensure the quality and accuracy of open access data?
Yeah, with MyTree, it's really all about creating a competitive ecosystem for more kinds of information. And that really is the driving motivation behind our project, is that we are being served algorithmic realities that are unreconcilable between ourselves. Like, we don't know, well, what does your algorithm look like, and why is it, like, where is consensus reality? It's getting harder and harder to find. So our thesis is that by creating a marketplace for more kinds of social media, you're diversifying the places and the ways that people can express themselves, and that is probably the best way to solve this problem. So it's interoperability that encourages a pace of innovation as a result of a shared network effect, that it removes that network effect as the biggest moat to determine the winners and losers in social media, so that more people can build innovative products and projects and ways to serve information to people that they can get more benefit out of.
Right, and I will jump with you. How can the social layer infrastructure, as described in the context of decentralized societies, improve the coordination and trust among different knowledge networks?
Yeah, so social layer, in terms of social layer, we also help building the social graph, but in terms of real-world activities, because we are creating the events and also the pins on the map, and they are the real physical objects and physical things happening in the real world. So I think this is, as for social layer, we are building the digital space that is a mapping of the physical space. And the digital relationship is also based on the physical relationship in the real world. And also we would allow people to, we allow community to share those knowledge and organize the activities, but also we allow people to own their information and also have credentials on blockchain, which is open and persistent. And I also think a lot about the Conway's law, which is about the communication structure of an organization. It reflects on the software they are building. But also in the community, I think the structure of communication also reflects the relationship of the people. Yeah. And also, I think we are building the network in terms of the open access to data and also the trust. We are thinking it as a plurality of graph. It's not only the social graph, but also the interest graph, the data flow graph, the value graph. Yeah, there are many graphs overlapped with each other and creating new dynamics. Among those graphs.
Could I add just one thing to that?
Yeah.
And that, I touched a little bit on the importance of balancing public and private interests. And I think the ability for people to have, to form private groups is, for instance, really important. So it's like the openness of blockchain is really good in a lot of respects, but if we don't sufficiently address people's ability to engage with each other privately, we're just going to take all of the same problems that we have with our financial transactions on chain being public and duplicate those in social media. Like, do you want necessarily your online dating social graph cross-contaminating with your professional social graph? Or, some fringe, obscure interest of yours, you might not want your involvement in some group to be publicly known or discoverable. So I think the permissioning around that stuff is really, really important, and I know that Jiang and the team at Social Layer are also thinking a lot about that.
Well, I think we are on time for questions and close remarks for this chat. So, do you want to address something that will be helpful to the audience, or in general with the knowledge and blockchain construction in your projects? Only if you have, no worries.
So for Pop-Up City, I'm very interested in the unconference style events, because for conference, things are more organized and they are more in a top-down structure. Yeah, but in Pop-Up City, there are a lot of things emerging from the people, from the relationship they are building. Yeah, and so how can we encourage people to create new events, new content? And so I think in Pop-Up City or in the decentralized communities where we are building trust among people, but we are also building, but those trusts also incubate or brewing new content and new activities and new way of collaboration. Yeah, I think also in terms of this library, I think not only we will be able to exchange the books and information, but we will also be able to create new community and new way of gathering with this object of knowledge. Yeah.
So maybe just to add to that would be to relate an anecdote about the last pop-up city that Jiang and I were at together, which was Esmeralda up in Northern California last month, where I think the statistics, keep me honest here, but I think it was something like over 500 out of like 550 sessions were scheduled by people in the community, very unconference style. So it was a bunch of interesting people sharing with each other topics that they were interested in. And so the tools that Social Layer and other projects are building to facilitate this are really, really important. And then the communities that we can map our interests, our shared interests together with, that starts to be really powerful, and it unlocks just a whole range of new social coordination tools.
I totally agree with you. And I think this type of cities and these conferences allow to know the interests of people and in different countries, and then mix a graph to understand better the public goods and the public data. So thank you so much for this chat, and I don't know if you have some questions.